there, I'm Sandy Reese, Chief Encouragement Officer here at Get Fully Funded, where we help small nonprofits learn how to raise the money they need to fully fund their mission. I'm here to help you learn how to master the art and science of fundraising. And I've got a great tip for you in just a moment. But before we get to that, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that the next time we post a really great tip like this one, you're among the first to know. Okay, on to this week's tip.
All right, so let's talk about when to start paying yourself. We get this question a lot from founders, especially people who have left a job to start a nonprofit and they're very passionate and their heart's in it, but then they say, at some point I need to be able to pay my bills. So how does this work? Is it okay to pay yourself from your nonprofit even if you're the one who started it? And the answer is yes. Yes, just look around at all the other nonprofits who have executive directors who are paid and staff who are paid. Totally okay to pay yourself. Now, here's what you got to think about, though. What you have to think about is, when does it make financial sense for the organization to pay you? So if you're not a numbers person, this is going to be a little hard. You have got to dig into the numbers. If you don't have a budget for your organization, you need to put that together. Even if you're just getting started, even if you haven't delivered programs yet, even if you don't like numbers, you need to have an operating budget, because it's going to show you for the year in writing, on paper, what you're planning to spend. You've got to have a plan before you do it. You do not want to be like a lot of nonprofits that are out there looking at your checkbook and making decisions on what you're going to buy based on how much money is in the bank. That is not a smart way to do things. If you're doing things that way right now, you gotta stop. You need a budget, because it's gonna map out for you for every month what revenue is coming in and what expenses are going out. So you see the flow of money through your organization. And what you want to look at is where you start to hit break even or better. So in other words, let's say that your organization takes let's say it takes $1,000 a month to cover your costs. Maybe you're running it out of your house and you've got just a few things that you have to pay for every month. So you need $1,000 a month. Well, when you get to the point where you have several months in a row that you have easily covered that $1,000 and you have money left over, then it's time to start thinking about paying yourself. What you don't want to do is take the first bit of money that comes in and say, well, that's going in my pocket, and then you struggle to figure out how to pay the bills. You don't want to do it that way. And you want to make sure that you're doing this consistently. I recommend at least 3 months, that you can see for the last 3 months you have brought in more money than you needed and there's some left over. Okay, you want that, and you want to be able to look at your budget, look at your forecasts to see, is it going to continue to be the same way for the next 3 months or 6 months or a year? Because that's when you know it's going to be okay to start paying yourself. Here's the other piece about this. You don't want to start paying yourself and do that for 2 or 3 months and then have to stop because your revenue is not consistent enough in order to pay all the bills and pay yourself. That's not going to work. So you got to dig deep and find a way to lay this budget out and then figure out the revenue plan. So if you don't have a revenue plan, you need a revenue plan. What's a revenue plan? Well, that's the part of your budget that says, here's where the money's coming from. So if your organization has any kind of fee for service, people are paying to be in your programs, people are giving you money in some way, shape, or form because of your program. And for you guys who are in animal welfare, that could be adoption fees. It just kind of depends on what your organization is. So you're going to look at what's the revenue that you have from program fees. And then you can look and see what revenue do you have coming in from fundraising, and then is there anything else that's coming in? Sometimes there is. So you want to be able to see what is that going to be. Now, I can almost hear somebody saying, well, but we just got started. We don't really know how many people we're going to have in our program, so how do we budget that? That's a good question. So here's where you got to start talking about and thinking about, what do you want? So if you're just getting started and you don't even have your programs really up and running yet, what's a conservative number that you could project for the year and easily hit? So is it 10 people in your program? Is it 100? Is it 2? It might depend on your program. You want to start thinking about that and then thinking about what do you need to put in place? What marketing activities do you need to do so you can hit that number? Because then that number is going to make sure that the money is coming in for that program fee side of things. Hoping that's making sense. Same thing with your fundraising plan. You want to look at what you can put in place for fundraising that is conservative, that's going to be fairly easy to hit. So you don't want to say, well, we're going to raise $1 million. We just know that somebody's going to hit the lottery and they're going to give us $1 million. Probably not. So you want to have a reasonable, realistic fundraising plan. So you're going to have to make some educated guesses in the first year. In the second year, you can look back and see what did you do in the first year and make some adjustments. For those of you who've been doing this a little bit longer, yay, you've got more history that you can look at, and you can think about what is your plan for going forward. I was literally on a call earlier today with a client where we were talking about their operations plan for the year and how important it is for them to be purposeful about the number of animals that they want to save in their shelter this year, because that helps us estimate cost. That helps us determine how many volunteers or staff they're going to need, and that helps us as we're writing grants and doing fundraising. So those numbers play into so many things that become part of the revenue plan. So you have to project. Even if you're not sure, you still got to take an educated guess and figure out what that number is going to be, and then do everything you can to make that happen, to make it become a reality. So when do you start paying yourself? When you have these plans in place, when the revenue is coming in consistently, that you're easily covering your expenses, there's money left over, and you're doing it for several months in a row, and you can see that it's going to continue on for several more months, then it's okay to pay yourself. So the next question that people usually ask is, okay, I get that. How much can I pay myself? You're probably not going to be able to start off giving yourself a salary of like $100,000. And if you just left a job to come into starting your nonprofit, you may not be able to pay yourself as much as you were making in your job. So how much can you pay? That's going to depend on how much money is coming into your nonprofit. So you may have to start with something very small and conservative. But listen, it's better to pay yourself $1,000 a month than nothing. And then you look at it again in 3 or 6 months and you say, okay, are we consistently paying everything, including my $1,000 a month? If the answer is yes, and you see that you have like another $1,000 left over, it may be time to give yourself a raise. So what you might have to do is start out small and increase that salary over time. That's how it happened for me when I started this organization. I started out taking no salary because I needed all the money to cover costs. And then I was able to start paying myself based on how much money we had left over. And then the day came when I said, you know what? It is time for me to just be paid this regular amount every other week or once a month or whatever you want that to be. So sometimes you start small and then you grow into it. Now, there's other things that you can do just depending on your organization. Maybe your organization is not ready to pay you $1,000 a month. Does it make sense for the organization to cover a cost of yours, like let's say your phone bill? If you're using your cell phone largely for running the organization, or if your cell phone number is the organization's number, then it might make sense for the organization to pay your phone bill. You want to be real careful about that, and definitely check with your accountant to make sure that, oh, that's okay. I'm not an accountant, but my point here is you want to get creative about it, because sometimes there are ways for the organization to cover things for you that you would be paying out of that salary, and it makes sense for the organization to do that. Okay, so just think about that as well. The other thing you want to think about when it comes to how much is, what are other organizations in your area paying their executive director? If you want to find that out, just start looking at the job postings, because normally they'll have salary ranges in them. So you want to look for organizations that have similar missions to yours, but also organizations of similar size. So let's say you have an animal rescue that you've just started and you want to pay yourself, and you look at the local shelter that has 50 staff and have been around for 30 years. their CEO's salary is probably going to be a whole lot more than what you need to pay yourself. So even though they're doing similar work as you want to look and see, well, what's another organization that's doing similar work but that's the same age as my organization? What are they paying their executive director? That may be a little harder to find out. You might have to start asking around. The good news is you can use groups like our Fundraising for Founders Facebook group to say, hey, what do you think is a reasonable salary for a 2-year-old animal rescue organization, or whatever your situation is. So you can find out these things. The Association of Fundraising Professionals does surveys of salaries every year. So you can go look that up and it will tell you in different locations what people make, because it can be real different. Rural East Tennessee might be real different than New York City in terms of what an executive director is paid. But you definitely can check around, and that can give you an idea of where you want your salary to be when if you start conservatively and you grow up and you get to that, ta-da, here we are, you have an idea anyway of what you want that salary to be when you get there. Another piece to consider is if you're going to have to hire other staff, what are they going to get paid? And what does your salary structure look like for different staff in your organization? You may want to make sure that your executive director is the top paid person, or you're moving toward that to be the case. Because look, here's the thing. You might not be the director of your organization forever. Ultimately, you want to grow your organization so that it lives longer than you do and somebody else is hired to step into that role. And you want to make sure that you have set things up so that the organization is in a position to hire somebody and pay them a going rate to get somebody really good to come step in and take over your organization. So you want to think about that as well. One last thing to think about is, are there benefits that you're going to add? Because that's part of a total salary package. This is a hard one. And somebody was asking me this just last week. One of our clients said, okay, I know your organization is small. We're a small shop as well. How did you add benefits? You start with one simple thing that you can afford, and then you grow. The next year you add something else. Sometimes you do these things, you add benefits because it's a necessity. So like if you find yourself leaving a job, you started your nonprofit, maybe you've hired a couple of staff, you're a couple of years in, and you're like, gosh, we have got to have health insurance. Then maybe you do that because it is a necessity. You really just got to do it. This is something that you have to do in order to keep your team. If you can't do that, like everybody's going to have to leave and get another job. So maybe you do it because of that. And that kind of was where we got to here, where we needed to be able to pay health insurance for a couple of people. And so we just shopped it around. We just went out to see who provides healthcare benefits to small organizations like ours. And so we got quotes from, 4 or 5 different people. We picked the best one, and that was hard. So this is another thing I want you to get sometimes. When you start adding people, or you add your salary, or you add benefits, usually when you first do that, it feels like, oh, like it feels really heavy financially because you have just taken on a big expense. But the thing is, if you have chosen the right time to do that, where you can pay it, you've been had enough revenue for the last few months that you can do this, it's going to feel heavy for a few months, and then you're going to get used to it, and then you're going to find that you're bringing in even more money. You get used to it, and then a year later you're like, okay, great, now we have health insurance, let's add a retirement benefit. And you do the same thing. You look around for companies, and the nice thing is, if you are growing your donor base, you might have donors or volunteers or board members who either work in these industries or they know somebody in these industries that can help you. They can help you find good packages and good services, or they can help you find somebody that can help you navigate this. So that's the nice thing about having connections as you're growing your organization. And so you do the same thing. You add that retirement, and then you start looking around, okay, what else do we need to add? We're going to do some paid holidays. Maybe you decide you're going to offer like 3 paid holidays. That's all you can afford. Start there. And then the next year, bump it up to 5. And the next year, bump it up to 10. Like sometimes there are little things you can do like that actually are cheaper than than other things. So sometimes, like offering a couple of extra paid holidays during the year can be a nice benefit when you can't pay people as much as you would like to pay them, because the cost of adding 2 extra days of holidays is a whole lot cheaper than giving somebody like a 15% raise or something like that. So you might want to look at that, like extra holidays or extra vacation time. Things like that can be huge to make people feel appreciated, round out a compensation package, and keep them there working for your team to help fulfill your mission. So there's not a simple answer to when do you pay yourself. There's a lot of things to take into consideration. The biggest thing that I would share with you is be smart financially. Make sure you can cover it before you start paying yourself. Make sure you are consistently bringing in the revenue and you have a plan for going forward. Don't do this as a knee jerk just because you need money. Think about it and be smart so that you can set your organization up for long-term success, because that's really what this is all about. All right, you guys, have a great rest of your day and a good tomorrow, and I will see you not next week. I'm actually taking next week off, so I won't have a tip of the week for you next week. But the week after that, I'll be back here with something else that I'm hoping will be useful information that you can use right away. All right, see you guys later. Bye.